Hello everybody. Good morning, afternoon, whatever. Today I'm going to show you how to draw and color a critter, a rat. I haven't done a critter or some sort of a cute animal in a long time. And this is the year zodiac of the rat, a Chinese zodiac. There are 12 animals. Anyways, it's just going to be very basic and easy for beginners, or if you're intermediate, you can watch the video and hopefully you learn something about directional lighting if you don't already know. But in this one, I am going to show you how to get the character onto a ambient lighting to get the form, and then I'm going to add directional lighting on top of it to create some sort of dramatic effect or something like that. Directional lighting are pretty useful when you're trying to add those dramatic or some sort of a helping with the composition. If you put them into the scene or the environment concept, or in the storytelling, or it could increase the contrast between the light and the dark and create an interesting composition if you put them in the scene. Even on the character itself, it's also pretty cool looking sometimes. Like when I don't know a lot of things and I was like, oh, sometimes I saw like a pretty strong light and have a pretty good contrast. Those are pretty cool. And again, in the beginning, I'm going to break down the process so you know what you are looking at ahead when you're watching the whole video. I'm just gonna try to easily break it down to you so that you would kind of prepare for what you're going to be watching and what steps will you be doing. Then I will show you the video process with the commentary. Anyways, if you have any comment and if you want more portrait tutorial, please post them down in the comment below, because today usually I post like a drawing and painting portrait, but this time I'm just trying something different, some sort of animal. If you want some cute animal design or something more of it, then I could also do that also, but you have to kind of pick one. So it depends what I feel like. But portrait are also pretty interesting because I have to practice the portrait and facial feature, because I'm going to have to do that with my job all the time with the character design and environmental design. And I haven't done any environmental painting or speed paint in a while. So if any of you guys interested in that, so also let me know if you guys want to see those kind of stuff that I usually do or used to, like used to post them all the time. All right, and yeah, feel free to subscribe and don't forget to click like, and enjoy your coffee or tea. Have a great day. So in this part, we are going to break down my process. So basically, I start off with the one with ambient lighting. This one's a paint over. So with the ambient light, there's no directional lighting. It's just the default light that coming from the top, top down the front, about 45 degrees basically. So it's more like an overcast lighting. There's no high contrast. They're just kind of low, but then it still retain form. You can still see that this mouse still has mass and everything. Then I'm trying to look for the metal. So this is the metal part there. So maybe I should put them into the folder. Okay, that's the metal for the legs. The liquid metal is kind of tricky. I'm gonna try to explain as much as I can, but usually you might want to do the material study, which means that you paint different type of material. Like this one, I didn't focus so much on fur. It could have fur, but if you have short fur, then you could just get away with simple rendering. But for the metal, like if you do study of fabric metal, if you Google material study, then you see the sample of how the material study should be. Like usually you paint different type of material in a sphere right next to each other, maybe 5 or 6. All right, but we're not going to talk about that, but I'm just referring to like all these liquid metal. could, if you do this material study, it would help you with this metal part. So you see this rat, it has the perfect form, not perfect, sorry, just the typical form. But to show you how I get to these forms, basically, let me take this out. Okay, so basically I start off with the line. So we're going to begin with lines, and then we're going to fill in with the base color. Well, if I'm taking the line out, right? And then I start creating the form by just trying to find what type of shape the body is, and you get the tummy here, which is kind of like a spherical geometry shape, and you have the legs that coming out. Maybe I should start drawing this. So if you can simplify all this form, it would make it easier for you to deciding where or how the light would react to it. And this one, the legs going the other way, right? This one, the cylinder is coming forward. This one, the cylinder is going backward, as you can see by the cap of the cylinder, right? And as it's going backward, then if the light's coming from the top, 45 degree, this sphere, as you render a typical sphere, maybe a little bit more here. Then you have the shadow underneath, and just like a regular sphere. That's why I have all this sphere here, right? So to be some sort of a example. And then when you render the cylinder, you have like a line of light that expanding, and on the edge will be the shadow. But that depends on where the lighting is coming from. So if the lighting is coming from there, your cylinder would typically be, that would be the lightest part, and it's go darker and darker, and you have the line of shadow there. And this part, the shadow would get cut off, because as this part, if you draw a wireframe, it's coming down, right? But it's protruding out. So this part will be exposed to the light, and then you have another wireframe that goes. Okay, so to think of it in terms of geometry, it will help you break down this thing a lot easier. And as it goes, I create more eye socket, and then if I put the lights on and everything, then you notice that I have the light on the nostrils, because that part is like a cone shape that protruding out from the face. So once you are able to identify these geometry, then you should be able to render all this thing with ease, right? So anyways, all those geometry that you keep rendering, they are important, and once you are able to apply those rendering geometry of like sphere, cone, cylinder, and a cube or a box, then you should be able to apply all these things to your character or environment or anything in that nature. So I will just explain this briefly. If you want to know more, there are in-depth tutorial. Just plugging in my products again. The ultimate digital painting for beginners. You can go download the links down below my video. You can go either to gumroad.com/Xia Taptara or cubebrush.co/Xia Taptara. All right, so those what I explained, it's just explaining how all these, what do you call that again, default light or ambient light, creating this form. Then next I'll have to decide whether where the lighting would be directional lighting would be coming from, which in this one I decided it's coming from the right side of the screen, a little bit off to the front, which in this one I cheated because not just on the shadow though, the lighting would be a little more correct. If I have the correct shadow, the shadow would be going back, right? But I kind of cheated because I want a shadow to cover the metal. So forgive me for that. Anyways, because the lighting is coming from basically the right side, but slightly on the front. But if this shadow were to be correct, then it has to be coming from the back side and the right side. So the shadow, the correct shadow should have been like right there, wherever the arrows goes. Slightly to the right side still, but it's slightly in the back. So just so you know. And sometimes I cheated just to get the composition, because all this part shadow that I have here coming from the frame and goes all the way up to this mouse, and it's kind of cover this metal part nicely. And for the metal, I'll just explain briefly. If you look at the leg without the metal, it still have a pretty similar rendering, right? So let's see here. It is a cylinder still, so you can see the shadow on here, and the shadow and the light part is in the middle. But with the shadow, with the metal, it produces the extreme contrast, and you have more variation of the value. So basically, it is still retain that form, which is a cylinder, right? So you render it the same thing as the cylinder or that form of the thighs of the mouse, but then you have more variation of the value of the whatever color you're trying to put in. If you're trying to put in gray blue, but this one I'm just putting in gray, so it's got that metallic gray. And the contrast is really contrast because this is 95 and the dark is 21, so it's big gap between the high and the low. But on the leg itself, it's just 57, that's the lightest, and the darkest is 33. So the difference between the high and low are pretty low. With the material that have more specular level, which means it bounces the light off pretty strongly. It doesn't retain the light in itself. In this blue color of the mouse hair or the mouse body, it retain more color, or it absorb the light into it more so than the metal. The metal bounce the light back, so it got a lot of contrast, and it kind of show that highlight pretty strong. So, and I also have the reference for this pool of metal, liquid metal. So, so I would kind of have some reference point to go off of. And sometimes you just use the reference as a starting point to see what else you could do with it. It's not exactly the same, but I know that the shadow would be here and the strong light would be on top. And since the light is coming from top, so it's kind of similar, right? So I kind of use that, but then I have to consider where the leg's coming from. So you got a little bit of the shadow or the reflection of the legs going down. It should be slightly that way, but this one I painted really quickly, so I didn't have to like. If you trying to do a tutorial, you're not trying to think. Usually, if you're doing a finished work, you have to kind of like going back and check, maybe 3 to 4 times. But when you're doing a quick painting, sometimes you kind of you come back and look later, you're like, that should have been better. But sometimes if your knowledge is not quite there, or you haven't been painting long enough, you might not know certain things, and that should be fine. Just a matter of practice. The more you know, the more you don't know, because there are always more to learn. And also, directional lighting is coming from here. I put a really strong light so that it would give some sort of a, how would you say, dramatic, kind of. All right, so yeah, there are many things to talk about in this one, but I'm just going to kind of stop here. So this should be enough, and then we're just gonna start painting, and I'm just gonna start explaining to you how I do it, and with the commentary over the process of what I'm painting here. Oh, and it's the year of the mouse, on the Chinese zodiac. So the Chinese New Year is not here yet, but it's 2020, so we might as well put it there. All right, guys, All right, so now we start out with a blank canvas. Usually I use about 2000 by 2000 pixel. And the reason I pick this square dimension is because of Instagram. Usually if I'm doing a cinematic stuff, I'll pick a HD dimension, which is 1280 by 520, I think. I'm not sure, but I have it on my setting in Photoshop. But I usually turn my background to light gray, so that when I adding the color or highlight, it will pop up. So you don't really want, if you want to paint, you don't want to start out with a white background, because it's a bit hard to work with, to me personally, and to a lot of people. And then it is always a good idea to find a reference for a bunch of rats or rat design, or even mouse, and trying to find your own unique take on a certain type of character or cartoons or stylized whatever. I just draw all kind of stuff, and sometimes depends on the project. You might like, this is not really my type of style that I usually do. I usually do like the armor creature, or something a bit scarier or not friendly. Some kind of, like Guild Wars type, or Diablo, or certain kind of stuff on that realms. This is a little more like friendly animated style rat design. So I'm gonna have to gather a bunch of references and look at them before I can even start drawing them. And you must always look at the real reference too, like a real rat, different kind of rat, different type of rat, and then you start doing working on your reference board. And if you want to know about the reference board, you can, I think I have some video on it. You can type my name and type reference board on YouTube, and you'll find what the reference board should look like. Sometimes you can put it in the folder if you don't want to arrange it in the reference board, because sometimes it can be a pain. And usually the reference board, it's basically for, like, if you're turning in an assignment, then your instructor or your tutor want to know what you working with, and are you using them fully, or are you using them efficiently, or are you going in the right direction? But when you're in the work environment, nobody cares about your reference board. You just have to make the product looks good. And usually you turn in the work to me, then I'll just provide you feedback, like which part you could tweak, or the leg should be shorter, it should be longer, what you want to emphasize. So try to play with shape. And this one, I'm trying to play with the big head shape, and the body is a little bit more of a triangular shape. So it's basically, if you look at the big picture, it's like a big circular shape on top of a triangle shape in the bottom with legs. So if you squint, you can see that. And then with the ears, there's another two circle shape on both sides. But I play with the circular shape a little bit by slicing off the top slightly, or you could say tweak the circular shape into an oval. But it's more like slicing on top and make it a little bit curvy. So all these simple geometry shape, if you play with it and place it correctly, then you will have a very appealing design with just playing with the simple shape. You just tweak them a little bit, cut them off, trim them down, or exaggerate them, accentuate them. If you see like a lot of Disney character design for the female character, they usually accentuate a certain part of the characters to make the character look appealing. Um, it it takes a quite a long time to get used to a certain type of character, right? Especially, I find that female are pretty hard to do in comparison to male. Male are also hard, but people often, to me, are somewhat easier than animals because I haven't done animals a lot. I usually design character, not creatures. But when I start off my career, I usually design creatures before I start doing character. But my creature design back then were terrible, and they're all monster. They're not like cute like this. So then I turned the background to gradients, and um, the reason I turned to gradient, the top part is darker than bottom because on the bottom usually it got cut off. In the final, you see the cutoff, right? Um, I established the ground, the horizontal line, which is the ground. Um, but at the moment, I haven't established the horizontal line yet. I just make the sky darker. If you look at the horizontal line, usually as you look up in the bigger picture, the sky will always be darker, and that's why I set it up to be kind of darker on top and gradient lighter to be on the bottom. And usually just start off with just the black and white in the background. And sometime hardly, if I put some color in, I would just add a little bit. The saturation would not be as much. And you notice that I use HSB a lot, not the color wheel. It depends on the preference, really. But I feel like I have more control over the HSB scale rather than the color wheel. And I use the color palette, which you can see on the left side of the screen also. And now I'm just filling in the flat color. Just basically, the color is not too saturated. Depends, if you like the saturation, by all means play with it. But keep in mind that if everything's too saturated, then you have to somehow balance the color, and that's what we call color harmony, right? Those are going to be hard to play with, and you have to keep everything a little more saturated in the same harmony, basically. So I kind of use like right in the middle of the saturation. I don't go too far most of the time. I just stay the saturation right between 40 and 50, and because I'm playing it safe. And now I'm just kind of talking away whatever I can think of, right? Because a lot of time, if you're doing a lot of tutorial, you keep saying the same thing over and over. But I'm trying to kind of like adding more things onto the video so that you can maybe take that away and kind of applying to your character drawing, because you can already see what I'm doing here. I'm just applying the second color onto the mouse, which this one is a skin color, right? So the blue one is a fur color or the hair color, and the kind of pinkish flesh tone is the actual mouse skin. So I'm not sure if mouse have skin or hair. I mean fur or hair. So if any of you know, please post down in the comment below if there are skin, if there are fur or hair, because different type of, like, I think some rat, or I mean some mouse has fur, but rats probably has hair. I'm not sure. But some mouse also do have hair and not fur. Depends on, I think mostly depends on where they live and stuff, right? So, all right. So now, and for the mouse, usually it has a long, kind of, somebody might say disgusting tail, but that depends. I think that tail just fine. Mouse and rats are not that gross to me, but a lot of people are frightened by them because, I mean, they carry disease, of course. I think it's because of the black plague. And now I'm starting to render, and I use the clipping mask tool on top of the base color blue that I have, and I usually have my line on top, and I turn all my line into multiply so that you can see through and you can paint it. And now I'm just rendering. Think of it as like the body of the mouse here, I would say it's more like some sort of a beanbag, not beanbag, but like a what do you call those? A, a water drops, I guess. So it's heavy bottom and kind of slimmer on top, and the lighting is coming from the middle, kind of off the middle, off to the right and in the front. So basically the same thing as any other tutorial I did. If you've been watching it before, if you knew my tutorial, then you can dig around my channel and you see a bunch of how to color and how to render tutorial, or basically what I usually call digital painting. All right, so, and try to keep, at this point, try not to render too much. I'm trying to keep, if you see I add another layer here on top, this layer is, the first layer that I add the clipping mask is, I would say is multiply for sure, but the second layer on top is normal, so that I can keep the consistency of the value of the color. And I usually try to keep it into true value. I'm not gradient it, or if the value in shadow, I try to keep it the same and not different much. If there would be like maybe 3 to 5% different, usually I try to keep it the same. Like if you see the shadow range on the body and the shadow range underneath the face or the head, and the light I don't do anything with it at all here. So basically, the simpler the better. If you try to render too much, then everything will sort of look too rendered, and when you zoom out, it looks kind of weird. So at first keep it simple, and then you want to put the highlight or the stronger or more variation of more range of value in the spot that you need to put them. But for the overall image, try to keep it simple like this here. By just two value, and then you decided whether you want to put hard edge or soft edge. If the way to choose is basically if the form doesn't have sharp angle in between it, like on the tummy, you can see that it's sort of like smooth curving up. So I decided to use soft brush. But you see on the knees, on his knee, which is the leg that's coming forward, on the thigh, you can see the harder edge between the light and the dark. So those have more drastic change or more abrupt change of plane. That's why those creating the hard edge. And you can observing things around you, right? You're observing the object that have more curvy or smoother. You see that they are they have like a smoother transition, but the object that are less smooth or have edges, then you can apply the hard edge on it. But when you observe the object, you have to also consider the specular level of the object. If the object like plastic or something that reflecting the light, bounce the light back a lot, then you might not want to look at those. You want to look at the object that are matte, because those are the one that going to show you the more of the typical form of an object that you can use them to apply to your painting. But the highly speculate, the object that have a high specular level also has its own place, which is that what I talked about earlier, which is material. So, but for the normal object, just observe objects that are like cloth, something with fabric on it, or something with skin on it, like ball, right? Those are a pretty good one to observe how the light reflecting them and how they create form. And one of the best way to practice is just to set up the live drawing on your setting and put it in the sunlight or directional lighting, or put lights on top of them, or you can change the different lighting situations. You can see color and shadow, right? And you probably think those are boring, but those you will come into it will come into play when you trying to work on the real character design or anything in this nature. So to know the foundation is probably the best thing you could do. But you can also use toys and stuff, I guess. Or now there are like the figure that you can set it up and draw and paint or something. You can also use those. But and now I'm flipping the canvas. So I did look at the screen when I was talking. I just got carried away. Flipping the canvas is a good way to fix your drawing in terms of proportion and in terms of if you flip the face, it will look weird. So always flip your canvas when you draw or when you paint, and that is one of the trick that we always use. And talking about setting up the live drawing doesn't mean that you before you start painting character you always have to like, okay, before I do that I have to do this before I go to the next part. You can always go back and forth, do your own character and practice and just paint your character and paint what you think it should look like, right? Then you set up the live drawing and then you can like, oh, then you know, or you find out like what you lack when you start painting your own character, when you setting up the live drawing and paint it in real life. Then if you kind of observe and really think about what you did and think about what you're doing, then you can always use them as a comparative, um, um, just like how the light would hit a certain object, and when you're trying to paint on your own without any reference or light source, you just design your own character and painting it, then you can kind of see what you miss and what you should apply onto that, right? And then the next one, you kind of go back to paint your character again and apply something that you just learned from your setting up live setup session, and then go back to the live setup session too again. Then once you do an alternation of these two, you will start to realize that all this lighting and all this shadow, you get more understanding of how they should be applied to your character. Like when I talk about geometry form, right? Those are the same thing. When you're trying to render geometry shape and trying to apply your geometry shape onto the character, which is those will be very valuable. If you do it alternately, you won't get bored. You like design your own things and then you come back to a live drawing and then go to a live drawing session. It's a lot of work to trying to be a good artist. You have to do a lot of study to be able to make it, to be able to execute it well, basically. All right, so now I'm trying to kind of adding a little more. At this point, just cleaning up and maybe adding a bit more darker value, or trying to find a spot that I could add the occlusion shadow, so to bring out the form even more. And then once I finish with the ambient light on this character, then I could start applying the directional lighting. So, and I give him a maze because I can't stand have him look too cute. So I got to add something that make him look a little mean. But in this video, I won't put the part that I paint the metal in here because that's like another 20 minutes and I don't think I would be able to comment that. And plus, I want this to be a little more basic. So if I get that part of the video, I think I kind of I think about it. I was like, maybe I shouldn't put it in because it's gonna confuse you guys, or some of you guys. But for those who's already know how to paint, those you might be able to benefit from those. So I apologize at this place. Anyways, so yeah. Now I'm trying to find where or how big the shadow, and there I could find the occlusion shadow in his armpit. As you can see, as I add those dark line onto the armpit, then it creates the depth, which make the underarm look even deeper, and a little bit of shadow on the side of the neck, and one side will be thicker and one side will be thinner, because since the lighting Usually I don't like to put anything right in the middle, so I try to offset it a little bit, maybe to the right or to the left. So one side of the shadow is stronger, like what I'm doing here right now. The supposed to be left side on the of the screen. Now I flip it, so it's on the right side of the screen, so you can see more shadow on the right side um, of the body. But then this leg that I'm painting earlier here, it's you kind of see the underside of it because so as I was saying, the record got cut off, don't know when. But the legs in the shadow, like this leg here that I'm painting, is the one that looks like it's backward, right? It's going in the back because it's hidden in the shadow and the plane is facing down. So the light will always help you with the direction of the object. So the legs that got hit by the light, which is the one on the right now, it looks like it's coming forward because of the light. So everything that you are doing, painting or coloring, basically depending on the light a lot. So the light will help you convey how the object is situated or setting in space. So without those lighting, you wouldn't be able to um, express or convey which part of it is where. You see what I'm saying? So lighting played a big role of suggesting which part of what object is in where in terms of spacing. So, and now I'm adding a little more shadow. Now I'm putting another layer on top of everything because I'm painting over the line. So I don't like to leave the lines on, and eventually I'm just going to turn the line off. And once I turn the line off, I have to go back in and repaint everything again. So everything would look okay without the line. And sometimes as I start painting, as you see in the beginning, I turn the line off so that I can actually see if the form is working. With line often helps you convey form without having to make the correction to the form that you paint without the lines. But without the line, you actually have to make the form that you paint look correct and look just so that it will look like an object in space. So sometimes if you do it correctly, it would look like a three-dimensional object in the real setting, or it will look like a real toy or a real character, like in the 3D, right? Even though we're not painting real mouse, we can make this character looks real in terms of making it look three-dimensional using the lighting. All right, so now we have all this, and I'm tweaking the shape of the eyes a little bit and the mouth, and then he doesn't have a mouth. Actually, in the beginning, I was going to put the mouth on him, but then I decided, well, I should have just leave it without because I think it looks better this way. Sometimes as you're doing a character design or character drawing, you don't want, but sometimes you think leaving things could be better, or sometimes adding could also be better. So that is a crucial part of design. So you have to make a decision all the time of what to leave out or what to put in. Sometimes when you put it in, then you're like, it doesn't look good, then you take it out. And sometimes it's pretty hard sometimes, I would say. But if you have like a peer, like if you work in a studio, game studio or movie studio, then you have people around you that help you kind of putting the pro and cons of like, okay, if he has this, it is to fit the character, kind of, give you input that you could use in the design. Or your art director would be the one to make the call, basically, most of the time. All right, so now I'm just painting the maze, and it's going to be metal, partially. And if you look at the body of the mouse, like I mentioned earlier, the value range are not that far apart, and it's only have a simplified value range, which is 2 value range. But on the metal ball here, it's probably going to have a higher contrast, that means a wider value range, which means the highlight is going to be lighter and the shadow might be darker. And even though the local color of this object is a lot darker than the local color of the body of the mouse, its highlight will still be lighter because it bounces the light back and it has a high specular level. But also within the metal family, it also has the one that's super shiny and the one that has like a small spot of highlight, but it still have a reflection of the light that you still can look like metal. So if you want to do a metal study in terms of the metal family, you can also do that. Like, you know, different type of metal, the metal that are more matte, the metal that are more shiny, the metal that are super glossy, and the metal that are kind of rusty. So those could be pretty fun for you to do if you kind of like get bored and don't want to draw any character. Use those time to study these material study. If you don't know what to draw, you don't know what to do. Like people sometimes they comment like, oh, I don't know what to draw, blah blah blah. There are always things that you can do. Do fabric study, do material study, do whatever study you can, anatomy study, anything. I never run out of things to draw. I always never have time to do things that I want to do. That's actually my problems. And sometimes I want to draw this, sometimes I want to draw that. So now, okay, crucial part. I add the metal, but now I'm trying to decide where the light should be coming from. So I decided the light should be coming from the right side there and the top. And then I try to add the part of his snout and a little bit on the face, but I don't think that would convey the form as much. So I decided, okay, the snout will be protruding out, but mostly the head or the front part of the head will be flat, or a little, they're still round, they're not totally flat, but you know, it doesn't have that protruding part that that doesn't have any plane that the light could hit from the side. So the light would just hit on the side of his cheek and then the top part of his head. But I'm starting the light coming from straight right side before I kind of moving it up little by little, so it become on top and side also right here. So play with it a little bit. And when I play with the light, I usually use overlay and the background color, push it to the almost brightest. And once you play around it, maybe on the left or on the right, but you have to know the form that you are dealing with. If you don't know what form or what surface it would be, then this will be a pretty difficult task for you because you don't know what kind of shape it is in space. So to be able to put a convincing directional lighting, you're gonna have to know what plane you are painting, and does the plane that you paint exist? If that plane doesn't exist, or that plane doesn't look like it should be there, then your direction of the lighting will look weird, or it will look wrong, or it will not look convincing enough to the people that are viewing your work. So anyways, just try this or try something similar to this, you know, something simple, something easy, and just ignore the metal part, because if I put it there, then I'm gonna have to because I try to put the commentary on here all the way to the end. That's why I cut it out. If I'm not going to put the commentary on there, then I probably would put it in. Anyways, I hope you guys learned something from this video, and leave the comment down below. You can just say hi, or if you have any question, just put them there. And also, if you have any suggestion of what I should draw, because I did a lot of portrait tutorial on Sunday usually, right? But now it's the Chinese, it's the New Year's coming around, so I'm putting the Chinese zodiac, which is the year of the rat, down onto the video instead. So if you still want the portrait tutorial, maybe it will come up next week. Or if you want to see critter, put a comment down below. Which would you rather see? Would you rather see cute critter animals? I might put some cat or some weird tiny little character there. I'm not sure. Depends on what I feel like. But feel free to comment down below, and what you want to see. Maybe you want to see a scary rabbit, or um, uh, porcupine, or pig, or I don't know, just whatever it is, or just some kind of. But the character design, I'll usually put it down on Wednesday anyway, so you get to see it. So whether this one will be another week will be portrait or some other things, leave your comment down below for suggestion, and then I will take it for the consideration if I would make them or not, or make them. All right, guys. Well, this is going to end here, and I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. And if you want to know more about digital painting, or want to go in depth, you can download my ultimate digital painting tutorial for beginner paint like a pro. In the link down below, whether go to gumroad.com/Xia Taptara, or cubebrush.co/Xia Taptara, or you can even go to my ArtStation. There's a few tutorials there. I haven't uploaded all of them yet. And all right, guys. Well, I'm putting up my Patreon again, but I haven't set it up yet. Just saying, because some of you like going to my Patreon and pledge, and none of you has been charged or something, because I kind of put the pause on the Patreon. But the Patreon this time will be different. It will be a Patreon to support the channel for the YouTube. So I would just give all the content out, basically. So if you want to support the channel, feel free, and thank you for helping out. And I do have a full-time job, but this is what I do because I enjoy it, and I've been doing it for a while. So anyways, and maybe if I'm trying to do some comic or something, that would kind of help me do my comic on the side too, or graphic novel, I don't know, or some animation. All right, guys. Well, have a great day. Enjoy your coffee. Bye bye.